What's going on there, guys? Good evening. It's the Earthmaster here on this Saturday night, August 6th, 2022 date. It's about 8:22 p.m. California time. Latest quake shows a 1.9 earthquake up here into the Alaska region. Notice quite a bit of activity kicking up here in the Puerto Rico area. We got a major swarm of movement kicking up around that area of the world. Zooming into the Puerto Rico area here. This is just a 2.5 map and above, 2.5 magnitudes and above. About 20 earthquakes or so within this region. That's a pretty good uptick in the magnitude department. When we bring up the all magnitudes here, we see quite a bit of swarming, about 41 earthquakes within this little swarming area. Now this area here seen a pretty large earthquake, back in, when was that, 2020 or so? I kind of lost my my catalog here by doing an internet speed test. I was having some issues here on the stream, but I think we got that taken care of. But they did have a pretty good earthquake back in 2020. We're going to go ahead and search that catalog once again and show you guys the magnitude that popped up back then. And I believe it's consistent with aftershock activity, although these swarms here could be indicating something much larger popping off here in this region. Of course, this Puerto Rico area has seen a pretty good amount of activity as far as swarming goes in the recent months. Let's go ahead and check out this area real quick here. I love the catalog from the USGS. Here's that 6.4 that struck back in 2020. January 7th is the date. Definitely created a little bit of damage out there around the region. It was felt throughout the Puerto Rico area. Very shallow depth there. And this is very consistent with the earthquake activity that we're seeing as far as the swarming goes within that region. It's been ongoing for quite some time. So one might ask, what does all this swarming mean? Is there something bigger brewing? Well, I think it's a very complex question here because Puerto Rico sits between two very important plate areas. There's a couple troughs here, a couple subduction zones that the Puerto Rico area actually sits on. You got the Puerto Rico Trench up here to the north and the Muriatos Trough, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, to the south. A couple subduction zones here, kind of rising the land, so to speak. And either one of these trenches here are very capable of producing a rather large earthquake. Looking at the last, remember I only drew a small portion here on the map. Looking at the last large earthquake was at 6.4 back in 2020. But we've had some other large ones, including a 7.7 back in 1943, a little bit north of Puerto Rico. But that's not the big one. The big one can strike up here. I believe they said that an 8.0 magnitude earthquake is possible. I say they because as far as the seismologists go, talked about the study here around the Puerto Rico Trench, seen an 8.0 magnitude earthquake here. It's been a while since they've seen that, but they believe that that is very possible, very capable up here in this region. Muriatos Trough down here. It is a subduction zone area, and I think this is very capable of producing a damaging earthquake as well. But the Puerto Rico Trench region definitely up there in terms of the Caribbean Plate region. So it's an area to watch pretty closely here, folks. I know the swarming has been around for quite a few months and a couple years now, but it's something to watch in terms of seeing any larger scale activity out here in the region. Normally, swarms do tend to point to a larger picture, right? More pressure in the region. So watch that area pretty closely, the Puerto Rico Trench in the area of the Puerto Rico area. Look, got a 5.0 coming in here within the last hour into the Chile region, 104 kilometers into the Peru-Chile Trench. Somewhat surprising. We haven't seen too much activity here today, but things kind of lighten up. Maybe could be an overall picture of the seismic activity across this area of the plates here. Looking up north into the North American region here, into the States. Got a little activity kicking up along the west coast, but first we're going to start over here well north, out here in the New Hampshire region. Seen a 2.3 kicking up here just a short time ago. Look at that timestamp, 5:55. Of course, that's UTC time. But Antrim, it looks like Antrim, New Hampshire. It looks like a few folks did report feeling that earthquake out there in the region. It has been reviewed by a seismologist, somewhat standard depth there at about 4.9 kilometers. Not really common to see earthquake activity in that region, but if we go back the last 30 days or so, and including the last couple months, we get these spotty earthquakes throughout the area. Montreal area, Ottawa, upper state New York, and specifically down south in South Carolina. So earthquakes do happen, and they can happen out here in the upper portion of the eastern parts of the states. So not the end of the world type event up there, just a little shaker in the New Hampshire region. Out here around Tennessee, a little activity out here around eastern. Oh, what is that, Monroe? Man, that's a good one there. So if you guys are very familiar with that region, let me know the correct pronunciation. I've told myself in each and every update that I will attempt to pronounce every single name out here. That's a promise I'm going to make. So no matter how hard it is, I will at least attempt it. Right up against the Great Smoky Mountains area, 2.0. In that region. A little activity out here around the New Madrid zone. Seen a 1.5 near the Wrigley, Tennessee area. Western Tennessee. Skipping over Oklahoma and Texas. Not a whole lot of activity today in the western portions of Texas. We did see some activity stretch around the Baja California region today. Things pretty active earlier with at least, well, it only shows a 4.7 now. Prior to that, we did see some activity overnight in this region of the Baja California area. No major movement in the west coast. Checking out the 2.5 map and above shows most of the activity throughout the northern end of California up here along the Cascadia, 28 kilometers below the surface for a 2.5. That's a subduction zone earthquake into the Cascadia megathrust area. That's pretty deep. A little bit of activity south of the Gorda Ridges, and also out here along the San Andreas Fault. Looks like a 2.7 kicking off there late last night. All right, so far as microquake activity goes, a little bit of spotty movement up here outside of Eureka, and some of this earthquake activity is deep as well, like I mentioned on that 2.7. So a little bit of shoving, so to speak, of the plates here with the North American, the Juan de Fuca plate, the Cascadia subduction zone, all showing signs of seismic increase in pressure here along this area. Let's go ahead and check out the tremor map tonight along the Cascadia subduction zone. Most of that, 197 epicenters, that's a pretty big deal up there, is up here in northern Washington area, southern Victoria area. Vancouver Island ranges seen quite a bit of tremor tonight. So we might be seeing a large-scale event take place here. It does start, seems like it kicks up about every 14 months or so in terms of large-scale activity, but it seems like that time frame, that interval, if you will, between these events are getting shorter, at least in the last year or so. So we'll have to keep an eye on that pretty closely, see if this turns into a large-scale event up north into the Washington region. All right, checking out the rest of California. Not a whole lot of activity into the central portion of the state. Bay Area looks pretty quiet and calm for now. Further down south as well, a little bit of movement throughout the Ridgecrest area and the Southern California, much further down south Southern California area along the San Jacinto Fault Zone. Nothing major, no major swarms to report along the southern segment of the San Andreas Fault. Okay, now up north here, where all the tremors taking place, we would expect to see some activity kicking up here with that tremor. And most of the time it does, but the USGS, for whatever reason here on the weekends, tend to not report a lot of the activity. And we'll probably see this fill in on Monday, so we will check out the week, or at least the 7-day accumulated quake map on Monday. See if they fill in these quakes, because there's definitely some tremor going on up here outside of Seattle. The tremor activity does tend to produce some earthquake activity within the region, so we will watch that pretty closely. Not a lot going on across the map here, right, on the USGS map in Yellowstone, but one would have to look at the Yellowstone map to see that we have a pretty little bit of swarming going on here around the Yellowstone area. Talking about Maple Creek, Norris Junction, Purple Mountain area, West Boundary. All this area kind of showing some heightened movement. Also over here around the Pelican Cove, Lake Butte area. Let's take a look at one of these stations here around Maple Creek. That's a pretty good swarm of activity. There's a good probably 30 earthquakes or so within this little segment of time frame here across this area of Yellowstone National Park. Also some larger ones over here around the Lake Butte area. Some of these more prominent signatures showing up earlier today in this area of Yellowstone National Park. Notice the signatures there across the park here. Pelican Cove, Borehole, Lake Butte. All these earthquakes here kind of showed up across this western portion of the park as well. These are some mid-2s, I'm sure, in the magnitude department. These other earthquakes that are more recent, not quite showing up here in this area of Yellowstone National Park. So these are going to be some smaller earthquakes, but earthquakes nonetheless. So a little bit of swarming kicking up here in this area of Yellowstone National Park in a pretty good sequence. Sometimes these swarms come like it's just like a consistent amount of earthquakes in a short period of time by a couple hours or so. Sometimes we can see about 100 earthquakes or so, excuse me, within an hour or so time frame. All right, I still have my voice. I'm still not quite recovered from all the smoke inhalation there from the McKinney fire up north. So we'll watch this pretty closely. Far as the Yellowstone swarm goes, they come and go, but nothing listed up here on the map. Notice nothing really listed up here on the map as well around the tremor area. So maybe they'll get to it, maybe they won't. All I know is I'm sure there's earthquake activity. We see it on the seismographs. Yellowstone, or the Alaska region, little activity up right around Denali, south, westward through the Cook Inlet. No major swarms to report, though, throughout the Alaska region. Looking at the 2.5 and above, just shows a little bit of minimal activity across the Aleutian Trench into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench. We've got one earthquake here of suspect, a 5.0, back behind the subduction zone here. A lot of times I look at these quakes that happen before the subduction zone itself. That tends to tell me that things are definitely on a big strain throughout the region, so watch that pretty closely. Most recent earthquake across the Russia region looks like a 4.5, 79 kilometers so deep into that area. Still seeing a little bit of swarming out here around the Izu Trench and off the coast of Tokyo, a 5.0 at 17 kilometers. Also, there's that swarming activity kind of kicking up here. It's been pretty consistent over the last week or so, with about 33 earthquakes of somewhat moderate magnitudes there. I'm talking about 5.7 and below. Still thinking that area is capable of producing a larger earthquake. We've seen, like I say, it's right before the subduction zone of the Izu Trench, so it's a little on the suspect side as well, similar to up north. The rest of the Philippine plate looks pretty quiet. Outside of that area, things kind of on the ghost town type of scenario until you get down here around the Fiji Islands region. Looks like 4.9 in the Tonga Trench, the latest earthquake here at about 204 kilometers. One earthquake here outside of Fiji earlier this afternoon at 570 kilometers deep. That's a pretty deep earthquake into that region of the trench there. Across west, things are pretty spotty. Not a whole lot of movement across the Atlantic as well. So a couple areas to watch pretty closely here, folks, right now with the increase in activity is the North American plate. Obviously, the interaction between the Pacific plate here along the west coast. All that swarming we've seen, well, not swarming, but the four-pointers that we've seen in the Baja California area. Might want to watch the west coast pretty closely. Looks like we're starting to see that back building. That teeter-totter effect here along this area. I like to call it teeter-totter effect here between the plates because most of the time, I'd say about 95% of the time, when things are active over here along the eastern Pacific, the Cocos plate, the Nazca plate here along the east here, things are calm on this side of the plate. Until things really start get going over here along the west. I think we need to watch this area along the eastern portion of the Pacific plate and the Nazca Coco plate, Puerto Rico area. This whole section right here needs to be watched pretty closely. All right, let's see what else do we have here. We checked out tremor. That's a pretty good sized number right there, 197 epicenters of tremor. We're going to go ahead and check out Mount St. Helens to see what we got for the last couple hours of tremor. Or not tremor, but earthquake activity. Notice there's one earthquake up here on the map listed from the PNSN network, folks, there. We'll go ahead and check out the recorded seismographs because that is the data that we monitor, right? Looks like a little bit of earthquake activity throughout the Mount St. Helens region and the afternoon and morning time frame. I'll wait for that to load here and see what we got. Round and round she goes. Maybe, yep. There's an S wave from somewhere. That's a pretty good S wave, not for sure exactly where it's from. Surface wave from a much larger earthquake somewhere around the planet. A couple of small earthquakes throughout the region, it looks like, but yeah, no major swarms. Just a very typical day up there. Across the region, I do want to check out Hawaii real quick. Let me bring up the Hawaii map. See what we got for earthquake activity. It looks like nothing above the 2.5 threshold. We'll bring up the all magnitudes here and see what we got around Pahala. Things a little calm, not a whole lot of activity. This is a very minimal amount of earthquakes for this daily time frame. About 15 earthquakes within the region. So things are very mellow along that area in the Pacific plate, the center part of the Pacific plate. All right, solar weather activity. We'll go ahead and jump into that. Things kind of popping off a little bit. Let's see what we got here. Not a whole lot of activity far as the solar flare department goes. Why did I... Okay, here we go. I got a notification on my phone here just a minute ago about a R2. I believe it's an R2. Let me check here real quick. Let's see here. Type 2 radio emission beginning just a little bit ago. Estimated velocity at 477 kilometers. So what we've seen with that is a pretty good spike in the wind department. Not ocean wind or low pressure, high pressure gradients, but solar wind stream kind of kicked up pretty dramatically from a very low point up above the 400 km range. So we could see things spark up a little bit. We're noticing a little southward tilt of the interplanetary magnetic field regions. Notice that the dots here kind of separating, indicating that drop in the southern tilt. That could allow some solar wind stream to flow in and amplify the KP index here and allow the auroras to form up here at the higher latitude. So we'll watch that pretty closely. Again, this just occurring within the last 20 minutes or so of that wind stream kicking up. I believe that is from a coronal hole that's been facing us. Looks like right now KP indexes, or at least the forecast, is pretty minimal. I'm not for sure if these guys are updating their stuff or not. They've been slacking a lot in terms of providing the public with legit current info. I'm a big fan of being informed on current info, and they're a little on the slow side. But the solar wind stream right there, I see it pretty consistent with the notification I got on the phone. So we could be looking at, again, amplification of the auroras at the higher latitude. So if you guys are up there, watch for that. Solar flare activity, very minimal. Not a whole lot of spectacular events popping up there. And far as the solar disk goes, this was updated August 6th, it looks like. There is some sunspots, but nothing that is very capable of producing any flares that I would like to see, for that matter. Maybe 3074 and a little new event around the bend. Again, that looks kind of old. We can see it here on this map a little bit more clear. Those two sunspots might be of importance as we head towards the beginning of next week. We'll see how that plays out. All right, what else we got here? Fire activity. I'm really surprised, considering the inches of rain that this area seen over the past week or so since I've been up there. I'm surprised this hasn't been put out. About 40% containment, 60,000 acres for the McKinney fire. There's the coverage of the map right now. It looks like most of the area is kind of burning towards the western and northern section as well. It's just, like I say, this thing should have been put out a while ago with all the rain. Same with this Yeti fire. This is at 0% containment. I don't know what's going on there. Looks like they're keeping it south of California 96 interstate, or not interstate, but road there. Kind of burning out there into the forested area. You know, I'm going to keep my 2 cents to myself. It's just a little odd that all that rainfall did not put out these fires. We got some new fires developing out here further south, out here around the Six Rivers region, around Willow Creek. There was some lightning storms up here earlier. Actually, it was late last night. They had actually a pretty good thunderstorm that popped up here. But it looks like it may have started a pretty good line of fires out here around the Willow Creek area. Unfortunately, it never fails. Everything's so dry, but it's depressing. I hate looking at this fire map. That's kind of one of the reasons why I want to get out of California, is because of these fires. I get it. Fires can start anywhere. Alaska, I've seen fires in Kansas, Oklahoma. You get these wildfires, but nothing like California does. California is just, I don't know, guys. I'm definitely ready to get out of the state. I'm not a big fan of it whatsoever. Unfortunately, I was born here, so it's not like I had any choice. And right now, I do have an opportunity to leave this area. It's just a matter of time. So one of these days, you're gonna hear me up here on the map saying, "What's going on?" Earthmaster checking in from who knows what, Kansas or Oklahoma, maybe Arkansas. Maybe Nebraska. I love this area because I'm a weather fan. I love the severe weather out here. That's my type of environment. I'm not a big fan of fires. Give me the rainfall. Give me the severe weather. Give me the humidity. Give me the hurricane. Well, maybe not the hurricanes. Okay. But just give me something besides smoke and fires and heat all the time. I'm tired of it. All right. Enough blabbering, folks. I am going to jump off here. Again, everything looks pretty solid and consistent with the stream right now. Been having some issues with my stream suddenly going down. Basically, it's my connection to the YouTube server. It seems like someone's just kind of blacking out my data that's being provided to it. And I'm kind of watching the IP addresses out there, and if I find out who it is, that's some federal time out there. That's some federal prison time, whether it's a company or individual. You don't mess with someone's internet. You don't mess with people's internet connections. Just like you don't mess with somebody's mail, right? You don't mess with the USPS mail. So, some people might think it's funny. Yeah, look what I can do. I'm so smart. I can pull the plug on this YouTube channel. But you don't do that. I mean, once I find out, there'll be a major lawsuit for sure, no matter who it is. All right, guys, I'm going to bounce out of here. Have a good night. Stay safe out there. Again, watch those areas, as I mentioned there on the update. the Japan region, Puerto Rico Trench, West Coast as well. Stay safe and enjoy your Saturday night. We'll chat you guys a little bit later on. Peace out.